So if you don't already know, I have a Substack at pewpew.substack.com where I mostly do some exegesis around Christian soldiers in the Bible. But I also have been trying to be better about providing some current events commentary of interest to Christian soldiers at the intersection of faith and service. And so one of the things that I came across yesterday, I listened to a number of different news podcasts. One of them is Up Next by NPR. It's this short podcast that just kind of introduces some of the headlines. And one of them was that Christianity is in decline. There is a new report out by from PRRI called "Religion and Congregations in a Time of Social and Political Upheaval," and the nutshell version is that Christianity and members of churches are in decline. Specifically, the numbers of people who affiliate specifically with a church or denomination have been going down. And I can see how some Christians may see that as a problem, either because it reflects poorly on the church, or like there's some kind of problem that the church isn't like relevant or something. But I don't see it that same way, and part of it is because of my experience in the military and kind of what we value. Numbers are not the most important thing. Even from biblical perspective, like in almost every battle, the Israelites were outnumbered by factors of 4 or 5 to 1. So numbers are not important. Quantity is not what we should be seeking. I have a deep-seated hatred of proselytization, because I've been proselytized too. I've run in circles in which that's important. I don't know if I've ever subscribed to it myself, but like I see the rationale. Um, but it's this weird formulaic kind of impulse in that's I think is human, right? If we're doing good, then we must be prospering. It's kind of a version of prosperity gospel where God rewards the good and punishes the bad. And in a perfect world, sure, that might be the case, but God did not create a perfect world. God created a good world, a world in which to be alone and isolated is the only thing that's bad. The Hebrew word for isolation, which is evil. It's not good that people should be alone. And so I can see that impulse of like, oh my goodness, the number of nuns is increasing, as in NONES. No religious affiliation are increasing. But like, what if we don't care about the quantity of Christians? What if we cared more about the quality of Christians? Um, and that's not to say that people should be leaving the church. I know people do and have very good reason to. But I'm much more interested in the quality of Christians than the quantity. I want those Christians who claim to be followers of this guy from first century Palestine, whose name was Yeshua, which we already have a word for, Joshua, that we call Jesus. I would love for there to be more followers of Jesus, but if more is more important than better, I don't want that. And so this decline in Christianity because the numbers are going down, I feel like it's not a red herring. It's not like intended to mislead, but I don't think that's the problem. Or I don't think it is a problem. That could actually be a good thing. It could be that the number of Christians that are dwindling are more serious about their faith, take it more seriously, seek spiritual maturity instead of like just fodder for the culture wars. And one of the things in this PRRI report is that the only demographic in which a majority of Americans are still identifying as churchgoers for a particular, are committed to this. 63% of Black Americans, Black Christians in America, still find a lot of meaning in church. And that is got to do with the social experience of Black people in America and what the church created a catalyst for doing. The civil rights movement was led by preachers. Martin Luther King, Ralph Abernathy were both ordained clergymen in the Baptist church. And so church for Black Americans has served a different function. As a white person growing up in Orange County, church was a social thing that everybody was just expected to do. And so if your faith is transactional, I put in something, God gives me back something. That's I believe that's a shallow faith. But if your faith and your church is a place where you find refuge from the unbearable, burden and pain of living oppressed in a culture that doesn't want you, and you don't expect to get anything but community. That makes sense to me. That makes sense that for Black Americans, Christian Americans, that they still have a pretty solid, at least a majority of them still identify really strongly with their own faith traditions. That doesn't surprise me. If you go to church expecting something back for you, I think that might be that makes sense in a world, in a particular worldview. For mine, and I think a lot of other military Christian veterans I talk to, quantity is not as important as quality. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be great, but it has to be quality. And by quality, that doesn't mean, puppies and sunshine. That means, your fellow church members are there with you through thick and thin, and not just like, I feel like it's substance. And I think the Black church has been better at providing that to its members than the white church. The white church is more, um, it expects different things from Christianity that Christianity has never sought to provide. Good feelings and togetherness, politeness, friendliness. That's not what the church was built on. The church was built on a crucified, oppressed person who said, "Look, in the end, as bad as it gets here on earth, I've got your back, and don't worry about the things that could destroy the flesh here in this fleshy world, but worry about the things that can destroy who you are, the kind of person that God created you to be. If you go to a church that expects you to smile all the time, might not be a Christian church in the historical sense. But if you go to church eager just to meet other people and share your burdens and share your triumphs and be prepared to fight and sacrifice for the things that are good that you are being denied, even if you may not see success in your own lifetime, if church is something more than just a social experience, that actually provides a sense of community in the sense of like give and take, not expecting something in return, but working together for the common good. That is a kind of faith that I kind of experience. That is a kind of experience that I felt in the military. Um, my squad didn't always win best PT, um, but when we needed to, we put the slowest guy in front so we could finish together. And we may not get awards and little brownie points or merit badges, but we as a unit were cohesive, to use military terminology. The Black church in America has experienced something very different from the white church. And the Black church is much more cohesive, both morally, but I think also socially. So it doesn't surprise me that the white church is in decline and the Black church is still is doing better, even in those raw formulaic kind of patterns, because they've got a substance behind them. But I'll leave that link in the show notes. You can also um, listen to my commentary, kind of current event stuff, in audio form if you subscribe to my Substack at pewpew.substack.com. I call it The Post, where I'm going to be leaving these little audio things to kind of give my 2 cents on maybe if you want to be a more thoughtful Christian soldier, or if identify with service and what that means in a holistic sense, and also desire to be a mature Christian person. That's the kind of community and the kind of reflections that I'm trying to build there at the Post, but also wherever I do my work, which you can find at pewpewhq.com. But really, Substack is where I put most of my most timely updates for the people to be able to listen to read, and to share links and share recommendations that I think are helpful for living a life of faith if you've been through the service or if you identify with those who have.